Shalom and welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. As you know, these podcasts are designed to explore issues related to the revolution in longevity and its impact upon ourselves, our families, our communities. And to that extent, we're very excited to welcome to today's Seekers of Meaning podcast and TV show, Rabbi Shlomo Brody, who is the executive director of Ematai. And this is a fascinating organization, relatively new, if I'm not mistaken, but part of a growing universe of organizations that really are talking to us specifically and our families about end-of-life issues, preparation, and the Jewish traditional approach to that. So, Rabbi Brody, welcome. Baruch haba. How are you?
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're in transit. You're in Modi'in in Israel, so stay safe and travel safe and Siyat Tova from wherever your next stop is. You're based in Houston, correct?
Our organization is a U.S.-based organization, but we service really the English-speaking Jewish community. So we do work in North America and the UK, and a bit in Australia and in South Africa as well. Okay, so let's get right to what is Ematai. Why did you create it? And love the verse, Im lo achshav Ematai, which I'd assume is where this word comes from. Yeah, absolutely. No, we were playing off of the idea that we see so much today, in which Jewish wisdom teaches us that there are times when you have to take steps to confront certain elements of life and the life cycle. And particularly when it comes to mortality, Jews aren't particularly excited to deal with those issues, like many others as well. And the message, of course, was Im lo achshav ematai, as Hillel teaches us, if not now, when? And we're trying to upstream some of those conversations. In truth, Ematai is actually originated from a different organization that's existed for about 20 years called the Halachic Organ Donor Society, the HOD Society. And when I took over the HOD Society in the beginning of 2022, it was solely focused on organ donation and posthumous organ donation in particular. And when you look around, though, the needs of the Jewish community, organ donation is a very important issue, but it's really one snippet of a much broader range of dilemmas that we face when thinking about aging and end of life and mortality. And so we rebranded and expanded our activities to be Ematai in order to meet what we think is this really urgent need.
Let me jump in right there, because I remember when I was running the Department of Jewish Family Concerns for the URJ, one of the first bioethics programs we did was Matan Chaim. And we distributed maybe, hundreds of thousands of organ donor cards and distributed to the congregations an entire study guide with response, etc., on organ donation. And this comes as no surprise to you. This was in the 90s. People saying, well, do we believe in that? Let's get this out of the way. The myth of, organ donation. This is a major mitzvah from across the denominational lines. Could you just speak to this? So I just want to get people understanding that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a major still misconception. We've made progress, but it's still a major misconception that Jews think that because of concerns that we have, which are genuine, that we try to bury people whole, bodily integrity, we try to bury people as soon as possible, and other such ideas, that perhaps organ donation isn't allowed. But once a person has been declared dead and they have the opportunity to save someone else's life with their organs, it's the greatest mitzvah you can take with you to heaven, to save someone else's life. I don't know if people have covered this as much in the States, but in Israel, it's got a renewed attention because since October 7th, over 11 soldiers have died, and they've died in ways in which they can be organ donors, and 48 Israelis have been saved from that. 48 Israelis, just from these 11 soldiers alone. So it's a very powerful mitzvah and opportunity. It's a source of tremendous comfort for families. It doesn't come up every day, though, meaning it's the type of thing where the opportunity for organ donation doesn't arise in all circumstances of death. In fact, the vast majority doesn't. But when it happens, it's a tremendous opportunity and mitzvah.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make, because I know in your literature, and as you mentioned, the genesis of the organization was, and then we still run into this in travels, and oh, do we believe in that? So thank you for clearing that up. The website, if somebody wants to contact you for any one of a variety of reasons, which we're going to get into, how do they do that?
ematai.org, ematai.org. And it's a very accessible website. We try to make it super understandable and type of thing that people can read very clearly. Some videos, short articles, and we have a 24/7, 365 emergency consultation hotline. So in fact, this morning at 4 a.m, I got a phone call from someone in Texas I can literally hear the beeps and sounds in the background of the ICU, and they weren't sure. They had an ethical dilemma what to do, and we helped them work that out.
Yeah. So talk to who mans this, who staffs this, just talk to me about this personal consultation thing, because I think this is a real gift to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two different ways in which people can reach us. One is when you really need help now, right? There's some situation which you're dealing with, and we have this helpline. I take a lot of the calls, but I have other people as well that help, where we have a whole really, I think, advanced advisory boards, both on the rabbinic side and particularly on the medical side of things, where we different types of issues we can consult with other experts. And that's the type of issue where people can just reach us and they can get help now. But many times, it's not like in the moment, I need to talk to someone at this moment, as much as I see where something's going in my loved one's healthcare trajectory or my own healthcare trajectory. I don't know exactly how to navigate this. I know the issue is going to come up, and I like to talk somewhat about this. And of course, that's what we're trying to promote, right? To upstream some of those conversations. And that someone can access us through our website as well, and they email us or through a form, and we get back to them pretty quickly, and we set up a time to speak.
Now, the personal consultations, I call you. Does Ematai go out into synagogue land, organizational land? You have the people to do that, or do you just spend your time at airport lounges going from city to city or country to country doing this?
I do a lot of travel, although Zoom, by the way, has made things much more accessible in a lot of powerful ways. So all of our events, really, we try to make online as well, and when it's in person also. But we have other people as well who are working with us in Los Angeles, in New Jersey, and different places who are available to do events. We have a new community outreach leader who's an oncology nurse by training and also a wellness coach. She's wonderful, named Beth Taubes. And there are different ways in which we offer services and programs to communities, to JCCs, to synagogues, to rabbinic organizations. We also do some work with healthcare providers who want to understand cultural sensitivities of the Jewish community that they're serving.
Right. Yeah, we run into this a lot, and some of the organizations that Jewish Sacred Aging allies with, this comes up. How do you deal with as a chaplain? I'm sure you have chaplains who will call you in there, and they're walking into a room where the people aren't Jewish. They may be an immigrant. They may be speaking different languages, and their view of the the doctor may be totally foreign to suburban American context. So this is really, really, really important. You on the website, you have a series of menus, I guess, being computer challenged. I'll use that word. Hopefully people can understand it. Dealing with patients and families, clergy, rabbinic stuff. In that, you have pain and suffering issues, Chevra Kadisha issues. Walk me through, for example, that menu of patients and families. What are some of the things that are covered in that?
Sure. Well, what we try to do is to anticipate some of the common questions that patients and families have to deal with. And I sort of divide it up into two, major categories. One category has to deal with cases where you want to just sort of learn and understand a little bit about Jewish wisdom on this topic. And we're very careful, by the way, in how we refer to this. We talked about this as Jewish wisdom. And for some people, that's going to be, sort of a matter of halakha, Jewish law, they find binding. And other people are coming to us because they want to understand a general Jewish perspective, whether they see this as a matter of law or not. It's very important to us that we're accessible to all types of people. And so we try to give people some access of general understanding of general positions and perspectives on some of the issues that come up: artificial nutrition, hydration, with DNRs and DNIs, do not resuscitate, do not intubate orders, medical type of orders. We have, and that's the type of thing where we're trying to just advance a little bit more knowledge. A little bit more knowledge helps a lot. But the other, phenomenon we try to offer to patients and families is to try to help them be organized in their advanced planning. And in particular, one of our big projects is we created a new advanced healthcare directive and conversation guide, which is meant to be culturally sensitive to the needs of the Jewish community. And that is so important, Rabbi, because as you know, if people don't designate who that person should be, who should make decisions on their behalf, and it's not clear to the doctors who that person is going to be,
right,
and that moment of truth comes up, it causes all sorts of chaos. And so we try to help people plan for what you can. You can't, navigate and know for sure exactly how your healthcare journey is going to take. We wish we can, but, that's not the way life works. But you should plan what you can.
The advanced directive, the conversations, having the conversations, this is part of this growing phenomenon in, I'd say, the last 5 to 10 years of organizations that are really focusing, Jewish and non-Jewish, on preparation for end of life, having the conversation. Here are the documents. You got to have this talk. Here are the implications of this. Why? My generation, because I'm significantly older than you are, is it the fact that the boomers are now saying, we kind of dodge this, but the reality is we're going to die. So we want to try to control as much of this as possible. Is this what's happening, or is there something else going on to cause this explosion of this awareness?
Well, I think part of it is a demographic factor where you have baby boomers and others who are seeing the life expectancy is increasing, but the question, and we have a lot of people who are in that boat. So
right.
That's certainly one reason. But I think also what's pushing things is the technology and the scientific advances. They're able to keep people alive for longer, but not necessarily preserve quality of life the way which people would like, are raising all sorts of issues and dilemmas. And that, I think, is becoming very, very acute. And so that combination of just the numbers of people who need assistance, as well as the new types of dilemmas which are coming up, is very important. I throw in a third factor, which I think is particularly a Jewish factor, which has come up in the last 9 months. I think the world in general, since COVID, is a little bit more sensitive to mortality. It made people think a little bit more that, mortality could be around the corner. And certainly in the Jewish world, since October 7th,
right,
there is this sense a little bit of, we don't know where life's going to take us. And I think that's also helping push along the conversation as well.
The role of ritual. Talk to me about how Amitai talks about the power of ritual. There's so many powerful rituals that support end-of-life issues. Where are the resources on the website in the organization for that?
Yeah, so I'd say that there are 2 different types of support people need. I mean, on the one hand, you're entering into the world when you're dealing with aging end-of-life care of a deeply complex ethical area. And either you can go on your own, right, and do the best you can, or you can look to your tradition and this wise tradition of multiple, many, many, many generations and centuries, and be able to look to that for wisdom to help you try to guide, to give you a framework for dealing with those questions. So that's certainly one type of, it's sort of a combination of both ethical, but also a spiritual support in feeling that you've got a source of wisdom that can help you along the way. But of course, our rituals are very important. Our rituals in terms of helping people, guide people in prayer, in comforting people, and giving support to the caregivers. And that's a huge area of stress, of course, for the caregivers, for family members. This is very important as well. And so I think that combination of those factors is deeply important. But Rabbi, I would add one other thing, which is that I think as Jews, we're great specialists in mourning, meaning death, burial, Shiva, we got that down pretty well. But in terms of addressing mortality, not just mourning, but mortality, that period in which, before you get to the period of mourning, that we still have what to work on. And we have all sorts of cultural barriers, not necessarily unique to us, but that make us wary of talking about these things and addressing these things in a serious way. And that's something that we're continuing to try to develop. And ultimately, it's a matter of the community prioritizing this. It's a matter of the community saying, we as a community need to learn how to talk about this, because it's going to be very hard for individuals to take that step. When you have communal resources and communal tools and a communal push to address those issues, it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, we find this in our work too. And I know you address this on the website. I think one of the first drop-down menus that you have is Judaism is not afraid to confront mortality. And the whole issue of meaning, hence the name of the podcast, but especially for our generation as we get older and confront, as you're talking about, the reality of our own mortality and all the implications and the universe of issues that arrive around that. There's a lot of, what does this mean? And now, I don't need any more stuff. I don't need more stuff, but I do need the why. And so that's why I wanted to raise it, because this is part, I would assume, as you're alluding to, what you're doing and the deficit, the communal deficit, which we see all the time in the spiritual conversations. And you're right. We can tell people about the documents and the this and the ABCs, the how to do things. The why is still lacking communally. So, and that's why I wanted to raise the issue of the ritual. So, for example, the Chevra Kadisha, how do you incorporate that into the work of Ematai?
Sure. So Chevra Kadisha, we work a lot with also various Chevra Kadishas, but I think that we're actually more focused on not so much burial, right, in that stage, but in terms of finding inspiration and meaning from mortality itself, confronting that. And we actually just ran a big project for Yizkor, which in Ashkenazic communities is a very important ritual, 4 times a year. The Sephardim don't have this, but Ashkenazim do have it. And we tried to create a special prayer in which people could also remember those that have been murdered since October 7th, or murdered October 7th, killed in the war. It's a very, the list unfortunately keeps on getting longer, and but it's one of those things where it pushes people to think about, okay, I now am confronting 4 times a year mortality of my loved ones. Well, what is it that I want to leave in this world to my own, to my children, to my family members, to my community? The experience of Yizkor shouldn't just be used to remember those who have passed on, remember their legacy, but should cause us to think about what legacy we want to leave in this world for ourselves and to our family members.
Right. The legacy issue is, when we teach this, in congregations and stuff, we always talk about that first paragraph of the Amidah, which is really, in my interpret, it's really about legacy. It's Lador Vador, and what do you want? Because we can't go, as you know, we can't go where we may want to go. So what of us do people want to take with them? One of the issues that comes up, and I'm sure you deal with this I can't say I'm sure, I'm going to assume that you do this in the context of what you're doing, and reminding everybody, we're talking to Rabbi Dr. Shlomo Brody, the executive director of Ematai, an organization that deals with mortality, end-of-life issues, the spiritual journey that we are all on. This again came up at a workshop that I just did the other day, pain and suffering. Could you just, it comes up all the time. And, the understanding that Judaism, there is no theological value And when you link this to the development of palliative care, talk to me about how we as a tradition understand when it is the use of palliative care to limit pain and suffering.
Yeah, there's no doubt that pain, suffering, or illness in one form or another is part of the human experience. And because that's part of the human condition, Torah, religion, has to speak to that experience. And we try to create a situation where it causes reflection on the meaning of life, and it causes us to reflect. But that said, we, of course, want to get rid of the pain and suffering. And there's actually a very interesting passage in the Talmud where one of the great sages is suffering, and his students say to him, "Oh, but you're benefiting, you're being rewarded for suffering in this world." And he says to him, "I don't want the pain or the reward for it, right? I'm not interested." And that, I think, is a very important lesson, which is to say that our primary goal, of course, is to try to address pain and suffering. And for that reason, palliative care is super important. You know, one of the big misnomers that you have is that palliative care is the same thing as hospice care, right? And that's a very dangerous phenomenon. And it's something which causes a lot of people to say, you know, I don't want the pain doctor coming in because that means they're just focused on that. It's totally not true, but it's a terrible misnomer. And so that's why it's so important, wherever stage you are in your healthcare journey, someone should be there to help you address pain and deal with those issues. And primarily, of course, that's a doctor and someone to deal with that on the physical level, but also it could be, whether it could be a psychologist or a rabbi or a social worker, someone to help you with that on an emotional level as well. It is so important. And I think that part of the holistic vision that Judaism has about thinking about pain and suffering is to recognize it is primarily a physical phenomenon, but not only. And that's something which our tradition can help address in a profound way.
When we teach this, and there's a link or a menu on the website, and once again, Rabbi Brody, the website again is what?
ematai.org, EMATAI.org.
On the website, on one of the menus, there's a little link to this concept of Judaism and medicine can work together. I know this is a class. It's not. It's a whole class. But my position is, and that's ridiculous. My understanding of Jewish tradition is that we're a holistic medical model, and the link, as you alluded to, the mind, the body, the soul are all interconnected. Talk to me about how our journey linked with medicine and Judaism and its value.
So I think you are absolutely correct that the tradition as a whole is certainly very favorable to medicine, to utilizing medicine. It's seen as a mitzvah, both to be a doctor or a healthcare professional, and also to get medical treatment, to be a patient. I think where some of the issues come up today is more that there's sometimes a feeling of clash of values, some form of culture clash, particularly when it comes to end-of-life care, where in the Western world in particular, there's a real strong push on autonomy, and there's also a push about quality of life, which of course is important. But, you know, in Jewish tradition, there's also real stress on not just the choices that we can make, which exist, but also our obligation to do what we can to heal others and to heal ourselves. And so sometimes that creates a little bit of a clash, in particular when it comes to end-of-life decisions or, you know, death with dignity and what that means. I mean, that's a very generic term. It can be a lot of things to a lot of people. And so, I think that sometimes, particularly when you get the more traditional elements of the Jewish community, you can sometimes have a bit of a clash with the healthcare society on this. And part of what we're trying to do when those issues come up is to help navigate them, you know, together. And I think when people are able to talk to each other properly, we can usually work these issues out. But sometimes there's a cultural gap, and that's part of what we try to do to help people with.
Yeah, one of the geniuses of one of the many geniuses of the Jewish tradition, it is, as you're alluding to, extremely focused on the individual and the attempt to embrace that individual's context within the context of a faith tradition. And especially at the end of life, when, as you know, and I'm sure you teach, you know, the various boundaries, go seis, trefav, all that say, you know, at a certain point of time, the prolonging of an inevitable death is not the mitzvah. You know, I live in the state of New Jersey. And one of the issues that again comes up, and we've done some podcasts on this and work with some families on this, because it's legal here, and that is medical aid in dying. I think there's 10 jurisdictions in the States plus Canada that have legitimatized this or legalized this. Does MIT have a position on this from the corpus of Jewish tradition, or is it really like, because I know the conservative movement and the reform community and their responsa committees have issued responsa on medical aid in dying. And I'm sure you get calls about this.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So I want to make a distinction between Canada and the United States right now. Canada has medical assistance in dying, which includes euthanasia. And actually in Canada, over 4% of all deaths now in Canada every year happen through euthanasia, which is really striking. It's over 13,000 people a year. So just last night, I got a call from someone about this in Winnipeg. So a traditional family, and they asked about it. And our stance on this is that we don't support either medical aid in dying, whether it's being done through euthanasia or as in New Jersey in 10 states, physician-assisted suicide. That being, we follow what we think here is a Talmudic directive that all human life is like a candle. And even when the candle, right, it's a light, it lights the world. Even when the candle is flickering, don't be the one to extinguish that candle. That said, we're very sensitive to the needs of addressing people's pain and suffering. And so part of the balance that we're trying to find is, well, what is it we can do to increase a person's comfort? And when can we choose and decide to say, we're going to withhold, right? Or forego certain types of medical interventions and just focus on making sure the person is comfortable. And I think if you are open to that balance, we actually do a lot for people. Certainly hospice care is part of that conversation, but not only. And my concern is, particularly in places like Canada, but other places where they've legalized medical assistance in dying, that's sort of going to become the default. And sort of, okay, this is how we deal with it, as opposed to taking the time and the resources that's necessary for giving people proper palliative or hospice care. So actually, we're a little bit active even on the political front on some of these issues because we're concerned that society shouldn't evolve in a way where it becomes like, this is what we're offering you to deal with your pain, medical assistance in dying, as opposed to a holistic view of palliative care.
Rabbi Brody, before we end, one of the other approaches, drop-down menus, focuses, that's the right word, of the organization, use a link to resources for clergy, for rabbis. That's really, really important because we're seeing more and more and more of these complicated cases, and they'll go to their rabbi. There's a short of geriatricians, there's a short of people trained healthcare, especially of end-of-life stuff. What's on that menu for clergy?
So we try to offer to clergy certain types of resources which we think will be helpful to them, that they can really use, whether that's our conversation guide that helps people to sort of talk about their values and preferences. It could be a set of prayers that rabbis just need on hand, right? And you have it all organized. It could be also rituals related to mourning. And we're also expanding our rabbinic training because this is an area of sensitivity where rabbis could use a little bit more medical training, but also a bit of training on how to handle this on a pastoral level. And of course, there are times when we get calls from rabbis say, this is the case I'm dealing with. I'm not really sure how to, navigate this. Can you give me a hand? And it's much more powerful, of course, for people to be able to talk to their own rabbi, especially if they can be there with them in the hospital. But we're there to back up the rabbi and give them a hand as needed.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that people understood this because we're the seminary training and I teach in a couple of seminaries is woefully inadequate on this, and yet when somebody goes out, as you know, into a congregation, these types of questions come up a lot more than can I light Shabbos candles at this hour or that? These are because this is loved ones, and it's tachlis stuff.
People are looking for their tradition for wisdom when it comes to life cycle events, and particularly on these types of issues. And rabbis need to be ready for that. And so, we're trying to help train them, but also be there to help them out.
Rabbi Dr. Shlomo Brody, Executive Director of Ematai. Hey, listen, thank you very, very, very much for your time, and travel safe, stay safe while you're in Israel, and continued hatzlacha with everything and all that you're doing. Keep in touch, and if we can help you, let me know. And just thank you again, Shlomo, for your time and your dedication and your passion to this. It's very, very important.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to speak to someone with shared interest and beliefs.
Yes, this is important stuff. So congratulations again on what you're doing. To all of you, thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to make a comment on the show or suggestions, please email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. And if you go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and want to support us in these podcasts, you'll find a very conveniently located donate button on the web. And just click on that and follow the directions. It's really, really easy, and we're very, very grateful. Seekers of Meaning is recorded and produced at the studios of Lubetkin Media Company in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Until we see each other again on the next edition of Seekers of Meaning, take care, everyone. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and most of all, be kind to one another. Shalom, Todah Rabah.